Hey everyone and welcome. I found an outstanding presentation regarding mass migration and why it can never work.
And I do believe that we have rotten politics, and I'm not using that as an exaggeration.
Now this is describing the issue from an American perspective, but if you can swap the American perspective for a European perspective, it's exactly the same principle and exactly the same reason why it will always fail. And it's perfect proof that mass migration is not to help the world's population, it's not to help the world's poverty, it's not to help anything, it's to prolong. Have a listen to what he says, everyone.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? Well, let's start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world. 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take 1 million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world. And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country, but instead stay in their countries to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen.
So there you go. Very good presentation, wasn't it? So all of this, we're only doing it to help the world's population. It's not the case at all. We all know why mass migration happens, and it's because it lowers the wage of the nation on an average, and it increases the house prices and tax revenue. So it's all a money grift. Meanwhile, they're shipping in thousands and thousands and thousands legally, whilst distracting the entire nation with boat people. Tip of the iceberg compared to mass migration, and he's proved in a very, very quick way that mass migration will never work. It will never work for the virtue signalling lies they tell you on why they're doing it. Definitely work for the things that it's really for, and that's to drive down the wage price, to drive up the house price, and to drive up taxes. And did you hear the middle class crowd that were ooh when he said that it was the working class that feel the pinch the most from mass migration? They didn't like the truth being told then, did they? But let me know what you think. I'd like to know your opinion on this, everyone. Do you agree with him? Why do you think they're doing it? Let me know. Stay sane. See you on the next one.